There was one point in the race where I was like, oh, here we're in an interesting position. I think it was like near the foot of the final climb or somewhere on the final or the penultimate climb, right before Tadej Pogacar attacks. I think it was right where they were setting up their attack, hard pace from UAE at the front, and they had two riders and then Tadej, and then there was four or three. They were basically outgunned by Visma, but like in a flick of a switch, boom! Suddenly Jonas was alone with Tadej and the other rider, and then Tadej just set off, and I thought that was quite telling because we were talking about how strong this was supposed to be, but obviously the mountains are coming. But I just think that moment really was like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. Like, all that Tadej really needs, and he showed at Vigilia last year, is just a semi-good team, and sometimes just one guy, really, just to set the pace up for all of 2 to 3 minutes, start putting people in the red, and then he attacks off the back of that. And only really Vingegaard can go with that. But if Jonas is struggling to go with him now, I don't really see how things will change over the next 2 days and what Visma can do in order to put Tadej under pressure now. And they're going to have to try and do something about it. I mean, obviously his team was noticeably weaker today than Visma. So, yeah, like you say, the riders lined up behind UAE on that final climb. So, I don't know, maybe they could do something with that, but it's looking a little bit desperate, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, that's a good way of saying it. I thought that we were going to be talking about how Matteo Jorgensen was the great lieutenant, but I mean, he did a good job by getting rid of Remco. Yeah, Remco Evenepoel, what do you think about that? Obviously, there was that crash yesterday. When I saw the crash yesterday, I thought, okay, it's fine. He was probably just caught up behind or something. But then the other angle you see it, he actually does take a bit of a hit. So I don't know how much of that has kind of affected him. Obviously, Remco's always kind of stepped behind these two juggernauts. But yeah, Remco, not the day he will remember.
No, it wasn't really. And it is a little bit concerning for the tour, isn't it? It's not that far away. And it was a little bit concerning that he was beaten today by, I mean, I don't, like Lipowitz was just, kind of gutsy and just went for it. Maybe that's just my bias, maybe. But, and Jorgensen, obviously, he could sit on. So obviously that gave him the energy to then counter Remco on the Col de Cli, because he could, just really put it into him there. But it's a little bit concerning that, the guy who was third place in the tour last year was being beaten by two people who you wouldn't have considered really to be beating him. Although, to be fair, I did predict them in the preview, but yeah, that's beside the point. The point being, on paper, you wouldn't expect Jorgensen or Lipowitz to be beating Evenepoel, and it does kind of show that kind of inconsistency that Evenepoel has sometimes from a day-to-day basis. Like on a TT, absolute king. But you start to put him on some climbing stages and it gets a little bit shaky, doesn't it? And this wasn't even a particularly monotonous sort of day. Like, what was Evenepoel going to be like tomorrow, for example? We got 3 massive climbs tomorrow, so how's Zach? How's he going to fare there?
Yeah, you're right. I think that is going to be a bit of a damage limitation, and who knows if he's even going to be in the top 5 by the end of this, or top 10 by the end of the Kroatian. It did seem he was missing kind of a lieutenant, but because he was one of the first leaders that was completely exposed. Obviously, I don't know now. Is Lander being shipped in for the tour? He lost Louis Verrake as well. Oh, he's not being shipped in. Oh, okay. Oops. No idea what they're going to do then. That's not good. Just lacking that depth. And I mean, a season like this, if he has problems with like the lack of mountain people, I think that more hints towards that he might leave the team, Ineos, Red Bull, etc. But that's what we talk about in the transfer talks. Okay, Patrick, you can have your moment now. The German superstar in the making, very aggressive on that Cat 1 climb. I didn't really know what he was doing there. I was kind of like, is he wasting his bullets here? But obviously he got the group down to only 10 riders and then still had enough to get up the road on the final ascents. So blinder from him, you have to say.
I mean, who would have guessed he was going to finish on the podium of this race, eh? I'm just saying. But it is a serious question, though. do Red Bull or Hansgrohe have a bit of a problem in that? Okay, Roglic is going into the Tour and he's their guy, but I would back Lipowitz instead of Roglic right now. With how Lipowitz is looking and giving Roglic, well, we don't know how Roglic is, quite frankly, but I think Lipowitz is a great option, and Lipowitz is now in the lead of a white jersey. He is ahead of the guy who won the white jersey last year in the Tour. It might be a realistic goal that Lipowitz goes for white in the Tour de France this year. It's definitely not out of the question, and I think the last couple of years he's really come on leaps and bounds, and yeah, he was top 10 in the Vuelta last year in support of Roglic, but I'd say like a Tour de France suits him more. Those sorts of steadier gradients are better for him than the Vuelta, which has those like the harder gradients. So yeah, huge performance from Lipowitz, and I think he'll be trying to keep hold of his podium place for sure, and I think it's very possible. And yeah, who knows what he can do in the Tour.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the Roglic problem, maybe Lipowitz is the future of Red Bull. Who knows? Maybe Remco will join him. Probably not. Yeah. Other than that, kind of, who was like the riders that you were disappointed about? For me, it was kind of Lady Martinez disappeared very quickly, and then they got back, but then he was far behind at the end. So I think Bahrain have a bit of worries here. Butrago was also not really there. Yeah, so there was a few riders. Eddie Dunbar did a good ride to stay in that first selection, but yeah, and Paul Cesarx as well as the youngest rider in the race. But yeah, who kind of disappointed you a bit, or are you worried of think that they are disappointed?
Maybe, probably like Ineos with Carlos Rodriguez, I'd say. He's 2 minutes 29 down. I mean, behind Dunbar, Buchmann, Mass, Louis Barret as well. Like, Louis Barret was 8th place today. What world are we living in? There were a few people which I would have said that he would be doing better than. I concur. The Bahrain victorious contingency, a little bit disappointing. I'd say like Enric Mas, but honestly, he wasn't that bad. Like he was pretty much in that second clustering of riders. Who else would I say? I don't think anybody else was really that like disappointing. I don't pick Nick Postinel. Bardet was dropped from that break quite kind of early. But I'd say that's probably about it, to be honest. I think the main ones for me definitely being Carlos Rodriguez and Ineos, and Bahrain victorious with Lenny Martinez, because they are like their big contenders for the Tour de France. And like, even if Bahrain were like, oh, Buitrago could be our second leader, it's like, okay, well, he wasn't there either. So yeah, for sure, those ones.